Go ahead.
Hey, everybody, it's Larry Lawson and Chris Huff with On the Air with Indian River Hauntings as Chris is laughing over in England. And welcome everybody back to the show. We came getting on a little bit late tonight. Well, not really. I guess it's
No, we're
7
on
o'clock
time.
right now. We're on time. Thank you, Ryan. And of course, Ryan Lawson, my son, engineering this whole production from his place in Orlando, Florida. I'm sitting in Vero Beach, Florida, and my partner, Chris Huff, sitting over in Durham, England. Yes, folks, this is a live YouTube chat program about the paranormal that covers two continents. So we're really, really happy to have all of you here tonight. Um, Got a lot of interesting things to talk about. I get the word from Chris. I'm going to get grilled for a bit tonight since I've been
About
grilling him.
bloody time, isn't it?
But I want to take a couple minutes to just once again talk about some of the folks that we've met out there and that we work with. And as far as our usual friends out there, I want to say hi to Zach and Joe at the Driftwood Inn in Vero Beach, Florida, one of the places that are actually one of the more haunted places in Vero Beach, not to mention where we do our tours out of, and a great place if you're in Vero Beach visiting. I want to mention also the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum. Mel Fisher, famous treasure hunter who found the Atosha Spanish wreck down in the Keys years ago, was also one of the original treasure hunters here on the Treasure Coast, searching for the Spanish 1715 plate fleet that was destroyed in a big hurricane. But the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum in Sebastian, Florida, we've had the pleasure of investigating that place twice, and we're going back for a third time here shortly. Want to mention the Marsh Landing Restaurant, our favorite place to eat, and our headquarters in Fellsmere, Florida. And then there's Ditch 13, gift shop next door. And of course, got to mention my good friend Scotty Burns and her crew with War Party Paranormal down in West Palm Beach. A couple of other quickies here I want to mention. Quickie, can I say that on the air? I don't know.
Oh yeah, say quickie.
If you are interested in getting the highest quality dowsing rods for your investigations or your work, we recommend Doodlebug Dowsing. Our friends Nikki Shreves and Sherry Cox own that company, and they make the highest quality dowsing rods known to man, in my opinion. And they're the
Or
primary,
woman, or woman.
or woman. Oh, very
We're
well said.
equal
Very well
rights
said.
here.
So if you are interested in getting some high quality dowsing rods for your work, Doodlebug Dowsing, and that email is doodlebugdowsing@gmail.com, and you can find them on their website at doodlebugdowsing.com. Yes, I'm reading off the card here. That's why I'm looking away. Sorry about that. Um, and I want to give a shout out to Ike Enzi, my buddy with IDK Paranormal. He does a great YouTube show. So if you get a chance, go see Ike Enzi's. He's a cop like I am. Talks about his work with the paranormal and along the lines of law enforcement. IDK Paranormal on YouTube. He has 5 shows that have come out now with some really cool stories, and he's a heck of a guy too. So go check him out. And of course, our good friend, our mutual friend, Damien Freddy in the Shambles of York. Some of the best ghost stories we've heard in England while we were out there visiting. So shout out to our friend Damien. Freddie in York. Want to mention also we've got some tours coming up in Vero Beach, in Sebastian Beach this month. Go to our website at www.indianriverhauntings and check out our schedule if you want to join us on one of our events. Chris, who do you got to say hi to?
I only think Deborah listens, so hello, Deborah.
Hey, Deborah. Yeah,
Everyone else, it's too late, so they just catch up. But I think Deborah will be there. I'm
I
pretty
hope
sure
so.
she will.
Yeah, Ryan, if Deborah shows up tonight, let us know. And of course, if anybody else shows up and says hi, get on the horn and let us know that they're out there. Would you, buddy?
Will do.
Okay.
So, there we go. His one line will do.
Will do. Yeah, Ryan Lawson, the one-liner. I'm putting on my timer here so I don't make sure we don't lose track of time. So, Chris, this session of On the Air with Indian River Hauntings, you want to grill the cop?
I do.
You want to
It's
put
your.
me? You want?
This is your turn.
So
I've
you're
been
gonna put the
grilled for
spotlight on me, huh?
the last 4 weeks. It's been on me. This time it's on you. So, are you
Have
ready?
that. I'm ready.
Have
Have
at it.
that.
So, what I want to, I've got loads of little questions. The first one is, what made a hard-assed cop who just wants facts and details and don't give me any flowery stuff and I don't believe in anything? What made you suddenly get interested in the paranormal?
First of all, let me correct you right up front. Cops that say I don't believe in anything are not open-minded enough to do detective work. That's what I spent most of my career as a detective. I did run the police academy in this region for many years, but my true love and my true vocation is as a criminal investigator. So to do that, you got to have an open mind. And I've had people actually say to me, and I might have mentioned this on one of our earlier shows, people come up to me, "You're a cop. How can you believe stuff like this in the paranormal ghosts?" And here's my very standard answer. If you had a crime at your house, do you want a detective or police officer to come to your house and say, this is what I think because of what I think, and who cares what the evidence says? I think it's this because of these reasons, because this is what my life has told me. This is what my experience has told me. Or do you want a cop that's going to come in, look at the crime scene, look at the evidence, take in what the evidence says, and follow the clues, follow the evidence to solve the crime, whatever that answer might be? What do you want? Do you want somebody that's already made a decision when they walked in? Or do you want somebody with an open mind that's going to look at all the evidence skeptically and objectively?
So is this with or without donuts?
Oh, now see.
Oh.
Anti-copite here, I think. Huh? Okay. I'll have you
No,
know
that
that
was
we are much more refined. No, we're much more refined. It's now croissants. Okay.
oh, croissants.
Yeah. So
No,
no.
no, stick with donuts.
But do you
So
understand where I'm
no,
coming from?
I do. So when did you actually start getting interested in the paranormal?
Wow. As a kid, I can't say that I had any paranormal experiences. I mean, I think back on some events that I probably couldn't have explained, but I never really looked at them as paranormal at all. Um, was interested, my mom especially, she was always reading things like, the ancient aliens. I can't remember the gentleman that wrote those books there back in the 70s when we were youngsters. Wrote Chariots of the Gods, Ancient
Oh,
Aliens.
Eric von Daniken.
That's right, Eric von Daniken. She loved reading that stuff, and of course we'd talk about it, but nothing like a lot of people who said, "Well, yeah, when I was a kid, I had this happen or I experienced this." I can't really tell you that at all. Didn't have that happen. My first real experience dealing with the paranormal was right after I got into my career as a law enforcement officer. And like a lot of guys in our business, got started as a corrections officer in the Dade County Jail in Miami. I'd left Ohio, where I was from, to go to Miami to go to school. Spent a couple years in school, ran out of money, so I decided to pursue my dream of law enforcement a little earlier than I planned.
Haven't we all? I think that's a common one,
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah.
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
No problem. So I went and I got my start in law enforcement in the Dade County Jail. And I'd been there, I don't know, a few months. I was still pretty much a rookie, but I was on midnight watch. Got sent from what we called a team one, and team one was the bottom part of the floor where all the booking and the receiving was. And I was low man on the totem pole, so when they were short on the floors, I would end up getting sent up. And this particular night, I got sent up to the fourth floor. Fourth floor back in those days in the Dade County Jail. This is the main jail downtown. That's where the people were on suicide watch or possibly had mental health issues were there, right? So, and if you can kind of picture this, there's a control booth around me that went to the back, to a back door that went out to a walkway that walked around the entire floor. It was all barred in and locked in. Then out in front of the booth, there was a lobby area where inmates could be brought out and they take them down in the elevator, take them to court or whatever. The elevator was right there. And there were three wings, boom, boom, boom. And at the end of each wing was a big locked door, again, barred door that you could see through. You could see the walkway. So I'm sitting there, and of course I was just a young guy, and then I was still excited about this new job that I was in, and on alert all the time. And the center wing there was where folks were on suicide watch. So I'm looking straight down it from the control booth, and I clearly see a male walk from right to left. No question about it. And I immediately turned to the two guys behind me that were sitting in the control booth, and I told them, get on the catwalk. Lieutenant's out there. There was a stairway that you could come up from the bottom and get on the catwalk, but it was right behind the door to the control booth. So the guys shot up, went out, one went right, one went left, went all the way around the entire thing, came back and said, Lawson, you're crazy. There's nobody out there. I'm telling you, I just saw him out there. There was no question. He was out there. This place is haunted anyway. You're just seeing a ghost. It's kind of interesting because we also found in the hallway there was a sheet folded up in front of a cell that shouldn't have been there. And that was the cell where supposedly the last guy that hung himself up there was in, and used a bed sheet to do it. Kind of a side story. And I was the one that had checked the cells before. I had signed in and checked to make sure, everybody was still safe and sound. So that was my first experience of seeing something that I absolutely could not explain. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't drowsy. I was too young and excited to be there at that point. I saw a male figure go right to left, and I just assumed it was our lieutenant sneaking up to catch us or sleeping or whatever. So that was the first thing that happened to me. I remember it as clearly as if it happened yesterday. It was so vivid. And so
that's your first experience.
Yeah.
When did you start investigating? When did you actually take that and start doing?
Well, you got to understand something. Early, during those early periods of my career, you just didn't talk about stuff like that. Okay.
Right.
I mean, you talked about it amongst the guys, but nobody spent any time doing it. Now, you were a trailblazer. You were out there in the early 70s, 74, from what that, last video I saw, you were just a youngster out there. So, but in my case, you just didn't do stuff like that, man. They'd be sending you for a psych eval that quick. So we just didn't talk about it. Now, did stuff happen? Oh, absolutely. I left the jail later in 1980. This is back in 1980 when all this happened. I got on the road. I was working for the city of Delray Beach, and you see stuff on the midnight watch. You see a shadow. You see something move. You get a call to a place that a motion alarm's gone off, and you get there and it's all buttoned up. It's no air conditioning has moved anything. It shouldn't have happened. So you'll see stuff like that, and you just shrug it off. And did we talk about it? Sure, we did, but that's as far as it went. So it wasn't until the after 2000 that things began to happen. Had a couple very vivid dreams to this day that still affected me. And I'm not going to go into that, but dreams.
No. We'll have a dream session another evening.
Okay. But it let me know that there was it was so vivid. You had to stop and think that there was something else involved in making that dream happen. So time went on, and of course, we started. My oldest Ryan. You've met Ryan, haven't you?
Have I?
Ryan, is that the in between of us here? The guy. He was just a youngster, and I don't remember. Ryan, was your 10th or 11th birthday that you 11th. It was your 11th birthday? Okay, I couldn't remember. We'd been watching the shows. Yeah, it was the Ghost Hunters, Grant and Jason, and we watched it every Wednesday night. And Ryan was really, really into it, as was I. And he wanted to go for his 11th birthday. He wanted to go to St. Augustine. Now, a pretty incredible event had happened that, to this day, to my knowledge anyway, has never been debunked. And that was an episode of Ghost Hunters where they actually caught a figure. There was a camera set at the bottom of the lighthouse in St. Augustine, and it was facing up to the top. And there was a spiral staircase going up to the top. And on this camera, they caught a figure bending over, disappearing, going up to the next level. I mean, in fractions of a second. Did you ever see that?
No, I don't. I don't watch paranormal television.
Yeah. But it was pretty spectacular. Well, Ryan and I watched that, and he said, "I want to go to St. Augustine." So I took him up there for his birthday, and we got into the tour they had there, and it was pretty cool. But like a lot of tours, and this is one thing I really work hard not to have happen on ours. Too many people.
Yep.
But it was still kind of cool. We enjoyed it. We liked it so much they were doing another tour after that, and I said, "Ryan, you want to stay?" He said, "Sure." So we went through another tour, and this group was smaller because it was getting later in the evening. And the guide had seen us from the first tour, had said, "Look, you guys know the drill. You've been in here. I'm going to take the whole group into the lightkeeper's house. You guys can have the lighthouse all to yourself." So what? For about an hour, Ryan, we were in the lighthouse.
So
Huh?
I'd say so. About an hour.
About an hour we were in there, and we're sitting on one of the floors. And now, to give you a little backstory here, when the lighthouse was being built, the construction manager had three little girls, and three of them. Hold on, my phone is ringing here. Hold on just a second here. I'm gonna have to turn that down. Okay, so sorry, folks, that little interruption. Um, I'm back. So anyway, they died in a very tragic accident. Back in those days, and you'd have to understand the geography of Florida, there were no roads coming in there, and the railroads were just coming through. So a lot of stuff had to be shipped in for building on the Indian River, which is an intercoastal waterway. And so they had a railroad track that went down from the construction site to the water. And the little girls would play on the cart that they would use to bring the supplies up. And they were playing on it one day, and the brakes failed or whatever. The whole thing went into the water, and I think two or three of the young girls died, and had been reported being seen in the lighthouse. So Ryan and I are sitting on the fourth, fifth floor of the lighthouse, and dang if we didn't hear the little girls laughing. And of course, being the cop that I was, the first thing I did is I'm looking for speakers and wires or something like that, but there was nothing. Ryan, do you have anything you want to add to that story so far?
We looked around for like a good 5 minutes, and then we're like, okay, I think it's time to head down. We're starting to get we're starting to get like a
Now
little
that
nervous.
that's what I call oogie woogie.
Oogie woogie. Okay. But here's the kicker. There was nothing that could have caused that. We were too high up for it to be any ground effect. Somebody for outside the doors. We were inside solid cement or concrete
Mhm.
walls. So and it was inside. The sound was inside. So it was after that event. After that event, there, Ryan. Ryan and I decided to start our own group. We said, "Look, we need to find out what's really happening here." Uh, and we created the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation. In fact, Ryan's the one that actually came up with the name. His mom and I were watching
We
X-Files
all
at the
were
time.
watching X
Huh?
Files. We all were watching X Files. Come on.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so Ryan came up with the name, and so we started investigating, and we had some really interesting stuff. Because people knew me in law enforcement in the area, I was able to get into a lot of buildings. And our first real investigation was at a place called the Boston House in
Mhm.
Fort Pierce. Nobody it faced that place that had was famous to be haunted, but nobody ever investigated it until we got in there. And a friend of mine was an attorney. He owned the building, and he actually called us in because of all the experiences they had. And yeah, we started having experiences ourselves, everything from footsteps and strange emotions happening. We were hearing things. It was pretty significant. Um, in fact, one of the most important ones. You got any questions? Am I talking too much for you, Chris, my
No,
old friend?
keep going. Keep going. If you see me yawning, it's because it's 12:30 at night here.
Okay. Well, of the many things that had happened in this building, and there were it was at one point the house of the county, one of the early county sheriffs of St. Lucie County, and his son had shot a buddy of his with his dad's pistol in the house, and the boy died later. I mean, there was all kinds of things that happened in that place. Um, some were legend that really had no historical facts. Some of them did. Well, of all the things that happened there, probably the one that shocked me the most was. Excuse me for just a second.
Oh, he's off. He's off
Oh,
again.
sorry,
He's
He hit
guys.
Nana's the button that you hit that calls like an ambulance if you fall or something.
Oh, yeah, it's if you fall and you can't get up button. Sorry, that's where I'm at now, and my 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 mom stays with us, and I'm
Right.
Oh, I thought it
borrowing
was for
her
you
room.
this
She's
time.
not here. Ah ha ha! Oh, you're funny. Uh, anyway,
Sorry. Keep going. Sorry. Keep going.
lost a train of thought there. So at any rate, um, we're investigating the Boston house this one night, and Ryan and I were upstairs. Now you've gotten to know Ryan. You've said it yourself. He's a man of few words,
He is
very
indeed.
very unemotional. I shouldn't say he's unemotional. He just is very guarded. You don't see him get emotional. Well, we're upstairs, and by the he's this is a couple years after we formed the group, so now he's probably 14 at this point, 13, 14 years old, and we're upstairs in the third floor of this building, and they'd heard some movement downstairs. We'd gotten a call. Are you guys walking upstairs? No, we're not walking. We're sitting in the foyer up front, and they said, well, somebody's moving up there. And just about that time, Ryan gets this kind of hazy look on his face, and his eyes are kind of half shut. And it's not that late, so he wasn't falling asleep. But my son, who never talks like this, suddenly starts saying, "Oh, Dad, I love it here. This is wonderful. I feel so wonderful. I don't ever want to leave." I snatched his butt up and I got him out as quick as I could,
Pretty
because
much, yeah.
that was not him. Another cool thing in that building was we were investigating at one time, and we walked up to the third floor, and a door was standing open that I knew was shut, and we were recording. I had a recorder in my hand, and one of my team members and I were looking at it, and I had the door in my hand, like I was holding it like this,
Mhm.
and I said, "This door was closed. I don't know what it's doing open." And then suddenly the dang door pulled out of my hands and slammed shut.
Mm.
And of course, I said an expletive that was caught on
A
my
naughty
recorder.
word, yes.
A
A naughty
naughty
word.
word, yes, quite.
Naughty
And
word.
so that was some of our earlier investigations that really got things going. And the more that we got, of course, we were inexperienced, and this is one reason why you hear me just harping on training all the time, because we had nobody to teach us.
Yeah.
Like, but we
Let,
became
let's face it, who has?
well, and that's what we got to change. But
Yeah,
that's a
well,
story for different. That's a story for
that's another evening's
yes.
chat, I think. But the thing is, who has? I mean, we all start off doing. You've seen the video of my first investigation, which is
Yeah.
online now. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I really didn't. And to tell you the truth, it got really scary. In the middle of a forest, a mile in each direction to walk out, and two of us, 14-year-olds, and it started getting very, very silly in there. And we thought, we've had enough. We're off. And but nobody taught us. There was nowhere to go, and I mean, there were organisations like the Society for Psychical Research, but they wouldn't
Right.
have a
Right.
14-year-old anywhere near them. Oh
Right.
God, good Lord, no, 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 no! You've got to be yes, you've got to have years of experience before you can join us.
And
And you
and
just
that was okay back then. I get it back then, but now we've reached a point in, for lack of a better term, the sophistication of what we're doing and how this has grown. We've gotten past the point where people should be having to do this by trial and error. There's enough of us that have been around a while now. We need to teach.
there are enough decent groups out there that you can actually go and
Absolutely.
learn.
Absolutely.
Learn.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we've done the Boston house. We've done the first investigation. So when did you actually start doing these large group investigations?
Well, they're first of all not large. If you're talking about where we're bringing folks in from the outside, they're not investigations; they are
This is true.
experiences.
Yeah, most people will
Um,
say investigations. So
well,
yeah.
I'm going to touch on that in just a quick second. That's a really, really good point. But our investigations continued. We were getting some really good stuff. We had some really talented folks in our group. A couple that were before Evan became aware of what he was able to do, that were very successful, very competent, in my opinion, mediums that were helping, were part of the team. Like all other teams, people come and go and move on. Well, um, time had come. I was about ready to retire from the state. At this point, I'd been running the police academy for many years. And I was getting ready to retire from the academy as well as my statewide police work. And once I did that, I went right back into police work. I retired, went back into the city of Fellsmere.
Yes, indeed.
And because of my criminal investigation background, it wasn't long before I was the town's detective. And people heard what I did, and they started coming to me and started telling me stories about things that had happened in the town there. So I brought my team out, and we began to investigate. First of all, people said, you got to talk to this person, you got to talk to that person, and I did. I conducted a kind of a preliminary investigation of places, and we investigated the old school, which is now the city hall, the Marsh Landing restaurant, a few other venues out there, and oh my gosh, we were getting stuff we really hadn't gotten before. It was pretty spectacular stuff. Our experience is growing, our team is growing, and folks suddenly they want to know more about it. Now, by this point, as I told you, our interest began. We were watching Ghost Hunters. I don't mind using their name. But we'd reached a point where we were no longer what I call paranormal thrill seekers. I think everybody goes through that up front. That term paranormal thrill seeker that I call, and there's nothing derogatory about that at all. But what it is folks that go out and they enjoy the bump in the night. They enjoy catching the EVP, the footsteps, maybe the door opening and closing, and then they don't think twice about collecting the evidence, studying why it happened, what's the atmospheric conditions, what's the solar conditions, are there any commonalities, what's similar between investigations that might cause the evidence to be more pronounced on this date than on this date, things like that. We were like the paranormal thrill seeker. We had evolved. We began, and of course, being a cop, my belief, my train of thought was to collect the evidence, preserve the evidence, examine the evidence, and use it basically in a trial with a peer of our juries to prove the existence of the paranormal. That's where my mindset continues. Is people ask me if I'm sensitive? No, I'm as sensitive as a rock. I and you love that line, I know, but some people, I do agree that everybody, and I mean a cop's instinct, you get a gut feeling, and I've learned to follow my intuition. Maybe that's part of the whole deal. But I am not somebody that can see or communicate with the other side, such as you, Evan. But I do believe in the existence out there simply because of the things that we've encountered in these investigations. There's no question there's something on the other side. So my line of thought is, how can we prove it? For me, it's collect the evidence, do it in a standardized way that collects the evidence so that the evidence is pristine and we can compare it to other evidence and use it to make our case. And that's the tack that we took. And what ended up happening was people then began to hear, well, we're hearing this stuff. We want to know more. Can you do a tour for us on Halloween? Can you come talk to our group at the library? And next thing you know, folks are wanting to do more. Now, getting back to the TV shows, we also had reached a point where we realized that, and I know you and I disagree on this, the TV shows have a place. They have brought this to the forefront where it's no longer like back in the 80s, we wouldn't talk about it. Now people will talk about it, but they're also getting the wrong impressions. So we need to teach them what it really is. And that's the tact we took with our tours. Folks, this is what we're gathering. This is what we did. This is what the paranormal research and investigation is, and this is what it is not. Hopefully to provide folks with enough information that they can understand what this field is and take it seriously. It isn't about people running around screaming on the TV screen. It's about serious investigation and serious research. And that's how we end up getting. Now, you talk about the big groups. We do a couple of things where we invite folks in, but they're not true investigations. Why? Because just because of the nature of what it is, you can't do the things that we would do in one of our regular investigations where we're categorizing and compartmentalizing certain pieces of information, documenting. You can't do it with folks that are just learning. And sometimes, frankly, you get folks that take it more seriously than others. So it's tough to call it. It's not an investigation. It's an experience. But we've gotten some wild, wild things that have happened during these events that we have collected and folks still talk about today.
Excellent. What size group are you comfortable with?
Oh, I do not like the walking tours that we do. It's a little easier because we spend and I didn't even mention this part yet. We talk a lot about history
Hmm.
because if you don't love and embrace history, none of this makes sense.
That's right. It's very true.
Because those that we're talking to are not those that are here now. They're those that were, in theory, here in the past. So you must love and embrace history. So our walking tours, well, all of our events have a huge connection to history of the area that we're in. Um, and so the walking tours talk a lot about that, as well as some looking at our equipment, getting a chance to use it. And I don't like doing more than 20 on a walking tour.
Hmm.
20, 25 on a walking tour. Our big event, our dinner and a ghost hunt, which is more of a dinner, a discussion talking about what this whole phenomenon is and what it's not, followed by a 3 to 4 hour experience. I like to hold that to 24 people because we want to teach. We want to show. We want folks to experience it. And if you got 50 people crowded into one venue,
You
some
can't do a
taking
thing.
it
Yeah.
seriously, some not. It becomes very, very difficult.
Hmm.
So I like to keep the groups small and so that folks can learn about it. And the thing about it, and this goes back to my theory on how the television shows helped. We have gotten people that have joined our group that have become serious investigators based upon what they learned with us at the events of ours they attended. And if we're going to grow this, if this is going to become a field where people are going to take it seriously and continue to grow, then it's got to start somewhere. So why not start with what we're doing and learn the right way, have the right philosophy, have the right outlook and vision, and move forward? One of those people someday might be the one that comes up with the answer.
No. You
See,
know my attitude towards this.
I know.
You're probably at the stage now where I was in 1990.
say, you will not quell my enthusiasm, Mr. Chris Huff.
You
I
wait, you
believe,
wait,
I
you wait. Oh
believe.
no, it's nothing to do with that. It's just that every time you start to think you've got a handle on the rules and what's going on, they change. Something
Well,
comes along and throws a spanner, and at the end of the day,
see,
you become completely hippie about it, and you just say, "Hey, man, shit happens."
well, but you got to understand that's like a criminal investigation. Do you think that what happens on TV in that hour-long television show where they start at 8 o'clock and by 9 o'clock they've convicted the murderer? Do you think that's the way it really goes
Of
in an
course, it
investigation?
is. Absolutely.
Okay, then.
Every single case is solved as well.
Nah, not every plan. Every investigation that you do, nothing goes the way it's supposed to. Something
No.
is going to go haywire, and it's no different in criminal investigations or in paranormal investigations. Look, people talk about our investigations. They watch on TV. They see the excitement. They don't realize sometimes those shows take 3 weeks to.
Oh,
to
absolutely, yeah. And we were both discussing this at York. The way that your analogy of fishing is very apt. That sometimes they're just not biting,
that
and
and
it's getting this idea over to people that just because you're in a haunted location doesn't mean to say anything's going to happen.
No, and that's the one thing. One of the first things we talk about in any of our events, like you said, well, something's like fishing. Sometimes they're biting, sometimes
Yep.
they're not. And I also use the analogy of a police stakeout. How many TV shows or movies have you seen with a stakeout? The guys are sitting there watching, and the bad guys come in. There's all kinds of action. It's exciting right from the get-go.
Mm.
Police stakeouts, one of the most boring, long and drawn out things you could possibly do. No different, no difference with a paranormal investigation.
Yep. Interesting experiences then, from a different perspective. When you have these people coming in onto your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
what has been the funniest thing that's happened? No
Funniest thing.
names, no names, but
No,
what's been the
well,
funniest
no
thing?
names,
Yeah,
no names.
what's been the funniest thing? What do you look back on and chuckle?
One that just happened with Ryan just at our last event. I'm going to tell the story, Ryan.
Go on.
Once again, here's Ryan. Mr. Stoic, Mr. Very businesslike all the time, right? Always complain. He's like I am. He's as sensitive as a rock. I suddenly get a text from him. Because what happens is I'll have 2 or 3 venues going so people get to experience different places. I get a text from him, Dad, get over here now. So I go running over to the school, and I'm seeing his whole pot of people, that his whole group of people that he was overseeing outside. And they had heard over a ghost box. And correct me if I got this wrong, Ryan. They heard the words clearly over the ghost box, get out.
Hmm.
Well, they complied immediately, and they're all standing outside and wouldn't go back.
Yeah, so basically what happens is they hear it over the ghost box, and then the elevator in that area is known to make a lot of noises. And then we just
Mm-hmm.
heard a giant crash coming out of the elevator, and that's when everyone said, "We're going to get out of here now." And then my entire team, I don't know how many people were in our team that day, like 10 people. We had a big group. But
Much
everybody
bigger than
just
you
started walking outside. And I'm like, and we in the building we have 2 teams in it, one upstairs, one downstairs, and we were downstairs. And I'm like, guys, we're not supposed to leave yet. It's not time to switch, but nobody's listening to me. And me and Liam, the person that was helping me, were just like, hello. And everyone just walks out on us. And like, we're not going back in there. We're complying. And I'm like, guys. And then I called my dad come over here. So we tell him what happened. A few other things happened too, but it's just like, don't you want to see if this escalates even more, just a little bit, just to get some more stuff? But they're like, no, we're gonna comply.
And it was funny because that particular night, the first hour or so, dead quiet. Excuse
Yep.
the pun there. The middle was crazy. In all the venues, stuff was happening. Doors were opening. We were getting ghost box. I mean, everything was happening. I walked out, and I think I might have mentioned this in our last show. I walk out of one of the rooms in the Marsh Landing restaurant. I looked to the left, and I saw a tall, slender, like a cowboy, a very
Yeah, you told me
lean-looking
this
cowboy,
last time. Yeah.
and he 2 steps across the hallway, boom, boom, clears the bell, and one of my other team members said, "Larry, what did you see?" And I'm just looking because this guy went from wall to wall, 2 full steps, no question about it. And then the last half of the night, once again, dead quiet. Probably the other really, and we've had some cool things happen in that building, elevators going up and down and stuff. But I was doing a walking tour one night in the old school, and we were at the end, and the elevator was particularly active that night. It was moving on its own, and my back was to where the elevator was, and the folks that were with me are in front. And the elevator opens, and everybody turns and looks. And one gentleman who was a retired firefighter said, "Oh, that was just that lady wearing white. She went to the bathroom." I said, "What lady in
What
white?"
lady in white? Yeah.
Yeah, she just walked from the. She came out of the elevator, so it was just. I said, "You're all here. Who could it have been?" Well, she just walked into the bathroom, so I turned around. The bathroom was right across the hall from the elevator. I just turned around, grabbed the door to the restroom. The lights were off. Door was locked. Nobody was in there. So probably when you say the funniest thing was the look on this guy's face. The blood drained from his face,
Yeah.
and he's like, kind of like,
Yeah.
so that, I mean, that was it was a kind of cool event, but it was obviously rattled him, and the look on his face was worth $1 million. I'm here to tell you. Um, so other funny. Oh gosh, other funny things we've had. Oh my gosh, the kids laughing in Ryan's ear one night. Um, I could just go on and on, but those are probably my 2 funniest events, especially out in Fellsmere.
Right. You've given me some of the places that you've done.
Uh-huh.
Is there anywhere that you'd like to do? Is there anywhere that really, really you want to do?
Well, I would like to go to some of the other the Stanley Hotel. I'd love to go there. Waverly Hills Sanitarium. The downside to those places, they're very, very. I'd like to go to experience them, but there's a lot of people that go there now.
Yeah.
If I had to pick some place to go, it's a place I don't know about, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. I want to go to a place where maybe there's some quiet history there that not a lot of people have talked about, but has somehow been documented.
Mhm.
And go in there and do a straight up investigation without any fanfare from the fame of the place, Eastern State Penitentiary. Great place. And like I said, I'd love to go to Waverly Hills and the Stanley Hotel, but those are all known places. I want to go to a place and investigate the what's happened there, the reported activity there that quietly nobody's ever talked about, and prove or disprove it. So it's
How
not.
about a battlefield?
Well, I've been to Gettysburg twice now. I am unfortunate in the fact that I have not personally experienced. Well, it's not true. I take that back. I take that back. The second time I was to Gettysburg, and this is years ago, we were on a covered bridge where 3 Confederate soldiers were hung for desertion. And while we're sitting there, we're all sitting there, a huge chain drops. So we turn on the lights to look at this chain that dropped inside of this covered bridge. We all heard it.
Nothing there.
Nothing there.
Yep.
So I guess I have had a little bit of experience in Gettysburg. But yes, I would love. And you've talked about a couple of battlefields in Great Britain where some of the ancient battles had taken place. Hastings, I believe, is one that you talked about.
Oh, they go further back than that. Much further
Okay.
back than that. You know, we've got Roman legionaries marching around here. We've got battles going on between Romans and Britons still recorded. They go right back. We've got the Bottle Brush Down in Wiltshire. There's a Bronze Age warrior rides out on his horse.
Now these are events that have been seen, right?
Yep. By
See,
reputable people, not someone that you can turn around and say, "Oh well, don't take any notice of old Tom. He's just weird." Bottle Brush Down was by a famous archaeologist.
well, a lot of the places that we've gone to, the Marsh Landing restaurant, for example, it's owned by a dear friend of mine, Fran Adams, and her daughter, Susan Adams. Fran is a former county commissioner from Indian River County. Her husband was a former lieutenant governor of the state of Florida. Susan, her daughter, was a former mayor in Fellsmere, I'm sorry, and is a current county commissioner. These are educated businesswomen that are sharp as a tack. Fran has seen the lady in white walking across the floor in her restaurant. So yes, people that have credentials and have great reputations in the community have seen things like this. So you're talking about a battlefield. I'll switch gears on you just a second here.
Aha, go on.
Reputable people have seen it, not folks that have the gift that you do, but normal folks that have no known ability to them to see into the other side like you do and Evan does. Go out there, set up the equipment, spend a period of time investigating that field, investigating that area. Do it over a period of time, different weather conditions, different solar conditions, compare the evidence. Somebody's going to see something.
But hopefully, yes.
But
you can't guarantee who's going. We'll go back to your lady walking out of the lift. Only one of the party saw her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's often what happens.
Sure.
One person in the group sees, nobody else does. The one who sees, like you say yourself, at the restaurant at Fellsmere, where you saw the cowboy walk across, you say you're dead as a stone to psychic phenomena. You don't see or hear anything, but you still saw it.
Well,
you can't.
When I say that,
back to what I'm saying, you can't predict, you can't plot, you can't plan.
But there's still got to be a way. If I'm when I say I'm as sensitive as stone, that doesn't mean I can't or the average person can't see a phenomenon like that.
No, this is absolutely true. This is sort of the point that I'm trying to make, that anybody can see.
Yes, but
absolutely anybody.
Like when we were at RF Elvington, you could kind of hear and feel what was going on there. Evan, when we were in Fellsmere by the old section foreman's house could feel the ancient Indians watching us.
Mhm.
That's not something I can do. But that doesn't mean I can't see a manifestation when it happens.
If it happens, it happens, and I
Well,
mean,
that
this is going down something which we'll leave for another evening, because it's coming off the topic completely.
okay. Well, okay. But the only thing I'm going to say, I will say this on this. That's why you cannot do one investigation for just 3 hours and proclaim something to be definitively
No,
haunted
no, you
by a
can't.
specific
Can't.
entity. You
Absolutely agree
can't.
with you.
You
Absolutely,
have to.
it's like my Midland Castle investigations ran over 4 years.
There you go.
You know,
There you go.
that's what I consider an investigation, going back and back and back and back, and every single time something happened. Every single time, it was quite incredible. But anyway,
So,
we're digressing.
yeah,
So the
okay.
next question for you:
Yes, yes, yes.
what have you got in the pipeline?
What have we got in the pipeline? Wow. Well, we've got a place coming up. In fact, we were some circumstances came up. We were supposed to go in a week or two ago. We've got a place, and I'll call it. It's called Krabby Bill's. It's a restaurant in Sebastian, Florida, and it was built as a car garage, but that's not what it was built for. It was built specifically to hide smuggled alcohol and liquor during Prohibition here in this country.
Excellent.
And it's been said that people have seen or felt and experienced maybe the ghosts of the rum runners that were bringing the booze in there. The current owners or current staff there has had some wild experiences. So that's coming up in the very, very near future. I'm looking forward to going back to the place that you and I have an affection for, and that's Arcadia, Florida, and Clewiston, Florida, to talk more about the 5th British British Flying Training School there, that a guy named Riddle put together to train British pilots during the Second World War. So we're going back there in October. Going back to the Mel Fisher Treasure Museum, I think I talked about them up front.
Yeah.
That was a unbelievable. Quick story on this one. It was the last time we were investigated in there, and it's been about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. And it's run by Mel Fisher's granddaughter, Nicole Johansson. And Evan we're doing an EVP session with dowsing rods. Now, Evan is particularly good with dowsing rods. I think I might have mentioned this last week also. And he's using the rods, and they're sitting in there, and they're talking to and getting answers on the rods, as well as some of our EMF equipment at the same time, which is a very important point to make. We're getting personal experiences. The rods are working. The EMF detectors are working. And Nicole walks in, and Evan asks the question, "Mr. Fisher, this is you. If there's a relative of yours in the room, can you point the rods at?" And all of us were amazed at how quickly these rods worked, and it was just, I mean, that quick. Now, there are folks, and this is where you and I will come to agreement here on faith. A lot of folks will say, "Oh, it's just the person that's doing it," and no, it wasn't. It wasn't anything that Evan did other than sit there and channel something. Those rods answered and went right to, which leads me to another funny story. Do you want to hear a funny story?
Go for it. Go for it. This is what it's about tonight. You're on the spot.
So we're in the old school in Fellsmere one night, and we had a media person that was with us, and very, very skeptical, very, very skeptical guy, which is fine. Skeptics, to be skeptical is important in this business. But he just wasn't having any of it. I mean, there's some people that are skeptical, and no matter what you show them, they're not going to believe it. So Evan's got this group, and they're in what we call the choir room on the second floor of the school. And I walk in, and I watch Evan with his shirt up like this, turning around. I'm like, what in the devil's going on here? This guy was because Evan was using the rods and they were answering. He then gave the rods to this guy who was skeptical, and danged if they weren't getting the answers too. The guy was so freaked out. He was convinced Evan had magnets on him and made him pull up his shirt and turn around like he was being searched. And I walk in like, what the yeah? What is going on here?
Yeah, but I
And
remember
that
too
was fun.
because the K2 meter was going off that night a lot. And
That's right.
Evan,
You
and
were
it was
there too.
kind of cold, so Evan had his hands in his jacket to warm his hands up, and he thought he had a button in his jacket
Oh, was that
making
what
the
it was?
K2 go off. And that's why he said, "Put your hands up." And that's when you walked in.
Okay.
Yeah, but
But that was hilarious.
same with the rods. Like he just would not leave Evan alone with all of it.
Yeah. I mean, and this is one thing I'll bring up now. It's good to be skeptical. Ask questions. Don't take anything on face value. Ask the questions. But if you're going to walk into this field determined that it's nothing, and you're not going to have an open mind. See, that's what goes back to that original question about why a cop would believe in this stuff. It all boils down to an open mind. If you go in with preconceived, it can't happen.
Pretty
Then
much it doesn't, does it?
no, not only that, but you can't, your mind's not open to any possibility. Look, I'm not going to go into details, but I remember one case I worked in. My field of expertise is crimes against children, frankly. And I walked into a case, and I committed the sin. I did. Um, little had horrible black eyes. I mean, a beautiful little baby. And I said right then, somebody's going to jail. This child
Yeah.
was abused.
But that's the reaction of all of us, isn't it?
It is, but
Yeah.
it can't be as a cop. We have to have an open mind, because you know what it really, really was? The little girl actually fell, and the blood just drained into her eyes.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with the child being abused. Now, I tell you this story to put into perspective what I'm talking about, having an open mind. A cop, a detective can't do that. We must have open minds. And I say to you, a paranormal investigator must have an open mind. Be skeptical. Don't take anything on face value, but don't go in with preconceived notions. It is or it isn't. Go where the evidence takes you. And if there's one thing that I want to stress to anybody that's listening out there, and open mind, take the evidence, go where the evidence leads you. Don't go in with preconceived notions.
I'm actually looking forward to when you come over with the group, maybe next year or the year after, whenever it takes off, and you'll see me in action, and you'll see. I just wander. I wander
Well,
around all over
I
the place.
I tell you what, I got a piece of that at RAF
Yeah, I
Elvington.
know it's true, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not in charge. I'm not in
yeah,
charge. I just go where they tell me.
and this is the one thing I'm going to say to you. I'm going to turn the tables a little bit on here, and I'll say this to
Okay.
you. It's easy to say you can't. You can't put any parameters on it, and I agree to that with a point. But you got to have an open mind and say there's got to be a way that we can use your abilities, your gifts, along with the evidence gathering gifts that a cop uses. There's got to be a
We'll
way. To say no
we'll put it into
is not
practice when you come over.
okay. Well, we got a lot
That's
of work
that's
to do, you and I.
that's the only way that you can see both perspectives. You put it
Touche.
in practice,
Yeah.
because
And,
otherwise it's all theoretical, and
well,
theoretical doesn't work.
you go back to the days in police work where they thought the way to identify people was measuring their heads and the lengths of their fingers, and that is the old way of. It was before fingerprints.
Yeah.
That's how you identified somebody, by the height of their forehead, the diameter or the circumference of their heads, the length of their fingers. That was. I mean, we think about that now. How ridiculous! How silly is that? Look at us now. We've got DNA. Well, we in law enforcement have evolved from those days of measuring the circumference of the skull to identify folks to using DNA. And now we're finding who really did commit crimes. If we can do that in our world, we can find a way to do it here.
And that brings me on. That brings me on to. I mean, we're running out of time, so it brings me on
Yeah,
to
I
the
know, I know.
final thing that I was going to mention.
Okay.
How are you going to get other groups to go along with what you'd like them to do?
Oh, it's not what I like him to do, Chris. It's what I think It's what I think. If you take the standard we did here in law enforcement, and I say this all the time. If I'll investigate a homicide in Vero Beach, Florida, pretty much similar to how they investigate in Spokane, Washington. There'll be differences in styles, there'll be differences in local laws and things like that, but essentially the investigation is going to be the same. Once we understand that as a field, and we agree to use a sort of guidelines. I won't say not everybody's going to talk to people and interview people the same way. They're not going to. But there is going to be a structure the same. Once we can all agree to that, Chris, and come up with a plan, and that way all of our evidence gathering is going to be similar, we're going to move forward in gaining some of those answers. Now, your question is, how are we going to get other folks to do that? I'm not going to get anybody to do anything. What folks have to do is understand the importance and the value of working together. Not, oh, it's my evidence, you can't have it. Oh no, I can't tell you.
That is so common. That's the big problem. This is mine. This is mine. How dare you can't use my evidence? And
cops were the same way.
Group. It's terrible.
Why do you think back in the decades in the past things didn't get solved? Because nobody wanted the feds to get my evidence. They'll solve the case. Or nobody wants the city or the county to. They'll solve the case. We've gotten past that pretty much in the law enforcement field. We got to get past it here. We've got to work together.
Yeah.
We've got to come together with a consensus and quit this. Well, I do it this way, and my way is the best way. Mm-hmm. Well, you might have a good way to do it, but open your mind again, and let's talk about it and find a way that we can all be comfortable with and create a set of standards.
So would you be in favor of big conventions where everybody comes in and talks, or radio shows like this where everybody comes on and talks?
Sorry, Siri's talking to me. They do that. There's a lot of groups that do that now, but everybody's not on the same page all the time. Now, I've talked to many folks on my former radio show. I've had many guests on there, for example, that have talked about agreeing with coming up with those standards. What we got to do is come together as a group, and with that, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consensus
to come with a consensus, to everybody get together for the purpose of coming to a consensus. Maybe different groups all over the country that creates a plan, and then their representatives come to a central convention to come up with a plan, something along those lines. But we've got to come up with something, and we've got to separate. While people that are thrill seekers, there's a place for them. They get great stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've got to separate that from folks that want to come up with the answers. And I refuse to not believe that we can do this. We will come up. It may not be my lifetime, Chris Huff, but by God, we're going to come up.
Last point, how about writing up your findings? The things that you do you write them up?
Oh, we do, but here once again, and that's a great point about everybody doing it differently. Every state has a different report writing form. Mm-hmm. Who cares what the form is?
Just write it up.
As long as the essential information's in there. So there should not be. I would never suggest there should be one form fits all for the entire world. No, but a form should be written, and a report should be gained on prepared on an investigation that contains all the essential facts. That way, if a paranormal investigator in Vero Beach has an event and a guy in Spokane, Washington's conducting an investigation, he hears about it and says, oh, through a database or whatever, I need to find out exactly what those folks did. Then a report can go from Vero to Spokane, and they can compare what they did. And they'll say, hey, look at this. The moon was full, and we both got the same type of evidence on a day where the temperature was this and the moon was like this. Wow, it's a similarity. Is there a connection? So writing up reports, documenting. If you didn't document it, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
If you don't document it, it didn't happen.
Yep.
And that's what's going to happen. I've talked to folks on my show again. What do you do with the EVPs you've got? Well, we've got them on my computer. Well, where's the
How about letting other people listen to them?
Oh, no,
it's mine.
No, but you know what I find? I'm really finding more and more folks are agreeing, and I've talked to them. There's some great investigators out there that are coming to consensus on this. We've got to share,
Yeah.
and we've also got to call it quits. We've run out of time.
We have just about run out of time. So the last point: when's the book
Last
coming out?
The
When's
book.
the Indian River Haunt book coming out?
Well, unfortunately, I still got a day job,
All
but
right.
we're working towards it now. I'm codifying my thoughts on it, and once again, I got to make it clear to folks. I am not saying my way is the right way, the only way, the way all should follow. All I'm saying is, folks, let's get together.
Mhm.
Let's work together to make a change. Otherwise, we're going to keep stalling, and we can't
We're gonna
stall. Got
we're
to move
gonna
forward.
keep inventing the wheel.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Well said,
It
Chris.
really is. That's where we're up to at the moment. We keep inventing the wheel again and again and again, and it's time to move on.
Amen. That's gospel from the Reverend Chris Huff.
It is.
Ryan, you got anything you want to add to all this tonight?
Well, I will say one thing. I think before we should leave, we should say hello to the wonderful people who is listening to us, like Deborah Goldberg,
Absolutely. Hello, Deb. It's lovely to have you
B562R,
on.
and IDK Paranormal.
Oh, Ike is out there. Ike, I'm glad you're out there, buddy. Gave you a plug, folks. IDK Paranormal. Look at his stuff online on YouTube. He just put out his fifth session. Got some really cool stories, and he's getting ready to expand on that. So I highly recommend IDK Paranormal. Who else is out there, Ryan? Anybody else?
A B562R as the username.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And thanks to all you guys for watching. This has been a really interesting conversation. And I got to thank you, Chris. You stay up till past midnight so that we can do this. But I think it's important to show you're in England, we're over here, and we're talking about the differences and the commonalities and what we can do to move this forward, to get us off the mark and start finding these answers. So
It is indeed. I'm enjoying it.
yeah, and I hope.
It's about the one time I actually get to talk to people.
And and I'm hoping more people out there will listen. I want to remind everybody, if you have thoughts or comments, a subject you'd like to bring up, an opinion you would like to pass on to us, ghostguy59@gmail.com. That's how you can get a hold of me, and we'll be glad to bring up your questions. If you don't want to do it on while the show's live, a lot of folks will listen to this later. If you want to send it to me, we will get it out on the air to you the next time we come on, which will be next Thursday, right, Chris?
It should be next Thursday. Now the central heating's in, it's no problem.
Ah, good for you. Anything else, Ryan, you want to mention?
I think we're good here.
We're good here. Well, I appreciate your work tonight, old friend. Uh, Listen, there's no doing this with my son. I got to put this plug in there. Do it with both my boys. Man, it's great doing it. I know Ike does it with investigates with his daughter out there in New Mexico, and working with my son's a great thing. Great thing. Love it.
And there's me over here all on my Jack Jones.
Yeah, well, you know what? Couldn't do without you, old friend. So
Just about everyone else can.
any
For mine.
any parting thoughts before we call it a night?
No, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm about ready for bed.
Go have an old peculiar. Or
No way. Too late.
Okay, all right, folks. Appreciate you watching. We'll be back next week at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Please join us if you're watching this. Afterwards, send us your questions, your thoughts. Let us know you're listening. Most importantly, hit subscribe, hit like. Okay, we want to continue being the forum for all folks in this field to talk about, give their opinions, think about the world of paranormal research and investigation. So with that, we're going to sign off. Have a great night. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.
We will indeed. Bye for now.